Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning, and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. I'm your moderator, Karl Cassell. America's public education system, and more specifically, each of our local schools, are given the awesome responsibility of educating our youth in preparation of obtaining the proper skills to compete in the global economy. There has been an ever-increasing desire to have schools focus their attention on STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math. Employers are clamoring for the best and brightest talent and beginning to introduce curriculum that teaches the needed skills for the present jobs that exist. Will the training and schooling be sufficient for the jobs of the 21st century? What are the ways teachers and educators can deliver fact-based results that develop students holistically? Today we'll discuss these topics and hopefully many more and propose solutions for educating our students. I have a couple experts and, more importantly, people who are very passionate about education. To my immediate left, we have Molly Donahue, State Representative, Iowa House District 68, and a teacher as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
And on the end, we have Cindy Garlock, who is a retired teacher from the Cedar Rapids Community School District and also running for Cedar Rapids School Board. Good morning.
Correct. Good morning, Karl.
So let's start out with just what we're seeing in a market-driven education economy for our students. Is this the right approach? Do we believe business should be driving what our students are being taught?
Well, I think we've come to a point where education is frequently driven by the job opportunities. So you do hear a lot about global economics, and that our students need to have the proper education to fit into that workforce. And that's, I think, one of the big topics that we'll be talking about today. Are we training students to be part of an economy, a global economy? Are we training students to be problem solvers, creative thinkers, and are all of those things, can they all be done at the same time?
Right.
In addition to that, I would add that we don't even know what those hard skills are going to be for future positions.
Yep.
So we are actually looking at what I do at social skills or soft skills. Can the kids work together? Can they communicate appropriately in written form, in verbal form? Can they work or solve problems together as a group? It's not just about those hard academics, because yes, they need to have those, but anybody in any job today or tomorrow is going to have to be able to work with one another.
Yeah. So people skills are always going to be something that is necessary for our students. But if we, pardon the pun, hardwire our students for just STEM, are we going to lose a portion of those people skills, or more so soft skills?
I think we already have a little, to some extent. STEM is very important. We have lots of jobs out there that are needing to be filled, but we also have a lot of jobs on the other spectrum, which would be the trades.
Yep.
And not every student is geared to go to college or even to a 2-year program.
Yep.
Maybe they would rather do a hands-on apprenticeship. And the job market also is dictating that there aren't a lot of those college jobs available,
Certainly.
but there are tons of trades positions open at any given moment.
Yeah, and another thing that we need to consider is the percentage of jobs moving into the future that will actually require a college degree or specialized training. If you look at the fastest growing occupations, a lot of them are in the service industry.
Certainly.
That don't require any post-secondary education. So the question is, if we're emphasizing STEM in public schools, are we helping the students who are going to be going into the service industry? And are those students better served with a more general education, like Molly said, working on people skills and the softer skills? So again, I think the important thing is that we offer something in public education for all of those possibilities. And if we put all of our eggs in one basket, be it STEM or four-year degrees or trade school, then we're not going to meet the needs of all of our kids. And as a public educator, I think that's our primary goal.
So are we devaluing some of our service-oriented jobs by not necessarily even talking to kids or young people about the opportunities that are present in front of them? If we're focused on whether you go and get advanced degrees and or all of the science and tech and engineering and math.
I think we've devalued a lot of things, and and I don't know where it started exactly, but as an educator of 29 years, I've seen the erosion of certain programs and the other programs that have grown exponentially, and they were geared towards college, making sure that kids have AP classes, and those are great for the kids who are going to go on to college to those kinds of skilled work. But we've lost all the hands-on building trades classes within our schools, minus a little bit of engineering tech, but that goes to the STEM, which leans more to that than it does to the trades.
I think also some of it comes back to the economy and where the wages are. So STEM careers tend to be put out there in front of kids as these are careers that are going to be high-paying jobs. College degrees get you higher-paying jobs, in many cases. But what about the service jobs? So that's sort of a little bit out of the realm of education, but those service jobs tend to be the low-paying jobs. So what do we do for those kids that maybe aren't STEM kids, aren't college kids? How do we make sure that they earn a living wage when they get out of high school? Which, when we're talking about capitalistic economy and the labor market, a lot of that comes down to wages.
We also have to look at college and how it's being overpriced or whatever you want to say compared to the jobs kids are getting outside of college. So some of them, are moving back in with mom and dad because you certainly have to when you have hundreds of dollars a month that you have to pay on those loans, but you don't have a job that equates that amount of loan that you took out. So we need to be looking at those jobs and is it worth to go? Is it worth it to go to college and take all those loans out if you're only going to make this kind of money?
So, for our schools, are they solely responsible for preparing our kids? And I know the answer, but I don't think we really do our teachers and our education system justice by heaping all the responsibility on them. Should it be just left up to them to prepare our kids for life after school?
We only have the students 6.5 hours a day, so we as teachers know we are not the only ones educating these kids. Whether it's a good education or not, we don't know.
Absolutely.
But we have 6.5 hours to do what we can with all of the standards and all the requirements in the daily schedules of education, and making sure that the kids get the skills that they have to have, things they need to be able to do to be successful. So no, it should not be solely on teachers because we can only cover so much in that time.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that corporations have perhaps stepped into public education a little bit more, because teachers don't have time, they don't have budgets, state funding for schools is struggling. So when you see a big corporation come in and offer large amounts of money for you to teach their curriculum, or for them to offer maybe their technical expertise in a STEM class, that's very, very attractive. And I think as educators, we have to pause for a second and ask if that's the correct course. But certainly all of that outside money is very, very attractive when we're struggling for public financing.
You bring up a great point. So with the corporate curricula infused into our education system, does it allow for contrary views? So If the contrary view is this industry might destroy the environment, will they allow that to be incorporated into the educational system?
That's tough to ask. You know, it depends on your administrator and what they expect you're teaching, you know, in the classroom, and that would vary in building to building. I mean,
Really?
I personally, as a teacher, want to make sure that my students come out, you know, fully rounded. They have you know, civics information, you know, how to be a good citizen, how to be a good steward of the land and the earth, and as well as have those skills that they need to be successful in a job.
Right.
We want them to have that full balance, but it kind of depends on the time of the day and how much time you have to teach it all, plus who's running the school.
Interesting. Anything
Yeah, I taught science for my entire career, so when people talk about STEM, science, technology, you know, it's like, yeah, STEM, that's great. But we don't want to lose sight of those skills like problem solving, interpreting data, drawing conclusions. I think in the world that we currently live in, it's important for us to be able to independently look at information and draw our own conclusions. And so while I'm all for science education, it needs to include those thinking skills, not just a program that provides a job at the end for that student.
Certainly.
It has to be a richer experience.
Absolutely. And so you brought up wages earlier. And so as we look at a portion of our economy, if they take the high end, about 20% of the jobs need STEM education. So that's 80% without it. But even if we graduated all of these students with a STEM background, would they have jobs waiting on them? And if so, are they really high-paying jobs as they promote?
I'd say no.
Okay.
I mean, I can see the 20-year-olds at home right now working minimum wage jobs with college degrees.
Yeah.
The jobs aren't there. I mean, that's, as you said, 20% want those specific skills. And how many jobs are out there that actually need a full college degree of any sort? So that's why we need to start looking at what is important and where can these kids go after school, or after they're finished with their post-education, or even if they choose just to go into a trade, where's the job for them to go to? Because that's the key. I mean, we aren't just trying to make little workers, but at the same time, the promise of education is that they will get out with the skills necessary to become self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the economy right now, we hear a lot in the news about the economy is very strong, that unemployment is very low. Which sounds really good, but I think you can look at the data just from here in Cedar Rapids and Iowa. We have a lot of families that are struggling, that they're, you know, on minimum wage jobs or working 2 or 3 part-time jobs and still can't afford, you know, decent housing for their family. So it's not just about having a job, it's about having a job that pays a living wage. And if STEM occupations do that, then that's great. But as you said, if that's only 20% of the workforce, and the service industry is a much larger percentage, we, I think, as a society, need to address that situation, that people deserve a living wage.
Right.
And some of those service positions are going to disappear. They'll be automated. We know that that's the way of the future at this point. So we also have to look at what are we going to do to retrain those who are in those industries.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, and to piggyback on that, so as we're infusing this sort of market-driven education, we know how business treats the people that work. It's very competitive. It's kind of dog-eat-dog. Are we perpetuating that in the classroom? Are we giving our young people that mindset? And could that be dangerous for kids who don't want to necessarily go into STEM and want to help, want to be civically responsible in our society? Are we setting potentially a dangerous precedent? kind of a loaded question.
I mean, that's a huge question.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
You know, at the
What-
younger ages, we spend a lot of time on cooperative learning, so they work together as a group, so it's not competitive. But it does get to a point, it's, you know, in high school, when you're trying to get those scholarships, you're trying to get those awards, that it becomes competitive because you want to be at this level to get whatever it is that you need to move on from there. Is it dangerous? For those who don't rise to the occasion, yes, it is, because they're the ones that fall behind, or they're the ones that don't get what they need to move forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to look at. The middle class is disappearing, and what was different, you know, post World War II? What about the economy was different then? Because that was when the middle class really rose. So I think that's like a bigger question as a society, as a country. We have to figure out what's the purpose of public education. Is it a pipeline for jobs, for corporations? Is it to make or help our students become better citizens, better participants in our country and democracy? And do we have to make a choice? Can we do both? Which I think is what public schools try to do.
Yeah, and I would certainly agree. I think we have to do all of that.
Yeah.
It can't be just one, else we're going to lose a lot.
Right. But it's you know, it's just a lot. It's a lot on the plate for public schools to try to do all of those things and do them well.
As a teacher, I hear all the time from coworkers, you know, every year over the last so many years, they keep adding things to what teachers need to do on a day-to-day basis, but they never take anything away. So it's just become so compiled and it's so structured and so regimented. It's stressful on the kids. It's stressful on the teachers.
Yeah, I bet. Well, and so that would lead me to my next question, because the more we put on teachers, with all the other stressors that are going on in the classroom and the schools, are we lazily making teachers the scapegoat for income inequality and our failing schools and all of the little phrases that are thrown out there to kind of point the problem one direction without really taking a balanced approach to why are things the way they are?
Want to go
Another
first?
loaded question.
If I go back in my education as a teacher, so you know the 29 years, I've kind of looked back through the 20 years over the last couple of years, just reflecting on how changes have occurred, and over the last 20 years, I feel that yes, teachers slowly were they were the scapegoats. They were the problem. Why aren't our kids being successful? Why aren't we doing this? And we just kept buying more programs to make it better, but that didn't work. And ultimately, I feel like privatizers through the years couldn't reach the Midwest schools because we were strong and we were good. We were always in the top 1, 2, or 3 in the nation, and they found another way to do it, and that was to go after the teachers, and then just throw all these programs out saying this will fix you, and that cost money. The districts paid for it, and they just every few years we just rotated to a different program, and nothing ever seemed to make a change. And now we're 17. So I look at it as that we need to get back to the basics to make sure that our kids are getting exactly what it is that they need to be successful, and maybe not worry so much about what people say.
Good point.
Well, I think another factor in the more recent years are all the assessments that teachers are asked to do. I mean, I remember back early in my career, and maybe Molly, you do too, where as the teacher, as a professional, when I walked into my classroom, I was the one who got to make the decisions about the kids and their learning and their progress. And slowly over time, that authority has been taken away from the teacher and given over to a standardized test. And so again, it sort of goes back to the competition. Now we have these tests that everyone has to be achieving on, rather than the teacher being able to assess that student and do whatever needs to be done. Now everything has to be formalized, and again, we're sort of back into that competition to achieve. And teachers don't have time to teach. because they've been so busy assessing. So I think that took some of the spirit away from teachers. And then when kids come to school with needs like they have, that, you know, is another stressor for teachers. And like Molly said, it just seems like over time teachers take on more and more responsibility, but nothing ever gets taken off of their plate.
The autonomy's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, teachers were trained to go in and do their job.
Right.
And now we feel as though we aren't allowed to do our job. We just have to do what we're told here, there, there. It's just, yeah, things have changed a lot, and it's not, and I don't see it as a teacher, I don't see it as for a betterment for the kids.
Yeah.
So, is there obstruction going on to not allow reforms? Is that being infused? So when you look at maybe not having the autonomy, are there obstructionists being put in place to stop those reforms from happening?
We're doing the reforms. I think we need to get back to where we were.
Okay.
In the base, just make sure that we're covering the basics and not, and that we get to know those students and know what they need, and so we can teach to what their need is without testing. Teachers know. I mean, they know which students are behind. They know which student what they don't understand, because they spend that time with those students in the classroom, talking to them and working with them. So they do know those things. There's a lot of, you know, and I understand the need for data, because data is important, but it shouldn't be completely data.
Right.
Data driven as far as us constantly collecting data on tests or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's just that qualitative, I've been, you know, working with them one-on-one, and this is what I'm seeing, and this is what I'm going to work on.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the professional respect has gone away, and then we have, and we all know there's nothing about this topic that's easy. There's so many different factors that play into it. Just the extra burdens that teachers have now with the state funding not being adequate in the last few years. And so class sizes have gotten larger. And as Molly alluded to earlier, we've lost some electives for kids, gives them fewer pathways to get through school. So all of those things make the job of education just a little bit more difficult, and everyone just keeps piling on. So is there one magic bullet? No. But certainly I think we need to be starting to work on something so our teachers feel respected, our students can come to school and be in an environment where they're able to learn, where class sizes are small enough so they get the attention they need. And that all takes money, and that's why some of this corporate influence, like, as I said earlier, it's very attractive if they're coming with their checkbook.
Right. So in the last 5 or 6 minutes that we have, if you guys had your druthers, what would be some of the changes? If there's a list or a couple of things that you would say we should maybe go this direction, or add, enhance things here. You bring up electives being taken away. What would be some of the solutions you guys would propose?
I would start with the very young, you know, pre-K, making sure that everybody has a level playing field. But kindergarten has changed in huge ways since I went to school and since you went to school, and kids don't play anymore. We're still pretty young.
Only kind of.
We learned in kindergarten, and even when I started teaching, kids learned in kindergarten through play.
Right.
And they learned those social skills, those soft skills. And now we have so much technology in kids' lives. When they're at home, they aren't getting a lot of those soft skills in a lot of homes, not all homes, but in a lot of homes. So that playtime is very important, and they don't get that in kindergarten anymore. That recess time, even in the classroom, the playtime, and then in first grade, they don't get the playtime outside. That's all been taken away. So they're coming to school without the ability to work with one another and to talk and communicate in ways that they should be at that age. So I think we need to get back to, like I just keep saying that, get back to some of those basics. Let the kindergartners learn through play. And then first grade, you add, you know, a little bit more of the rigor to it with the reading and writing and math. But when I went to school, I didn't see science and social studies until the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Right.
Everything was reading, writing, and math, so that you got those skills. And so we now have this issue with everybody needing to be able to read at a certain level by 3rd grade. Well, developmentally, not everybody's prepared by 3rd grade to read at the same level. And if you're pushing that, then what happens with kids when they aren't being successful? They get frustrated, and then they don't like school. And if a child doesn't like school by 3rd grade, that is heartbreaking.
Yes, it is.
So we need to get back to those basics and make sure the kids are getting what they need at the younger ages. And then once they get to that 6th grade level, which is the typical spot where you start reading to learn instead of learning to read, where we can push a little further.
Well, the other thing, talking about kids coming to kindergarten, kids need to come to kindergarten and not be hungry, and not be sick,
Right.
and not be worried about whether the heat will be on when they go home or whether there will be someone there when they go home. And again, it's back to this societal, cultural decision that we have to make. If we value kids, and if we value kids' education, then we need to make sure that we are meeting their personal needs so they can come to school and learn those basic skills that they need.
And if you don't have those social skills, the other skills aren't going to be learned, because you have to be able to sit down and focus and function in the classroom. And it takes the ability, that ability is those soft skills, learning those at a younger age and being able to do those. So, we need to do what's best for kids, and that's how everything should be driven in education.
Right. And I agree, and I think we're, as you talk about the checkbook being brought out from these corporations, it's changing the perspective of our education system in terms of focusing on the student. They're more appeasing the corporations, and yeah, we need to train young people for jobs of the future, even though we don't know what some of those jobs will be, but we're losing sight of the basics, and that can be very dangerous. So thank you guys so very much for being on our show today, and we're at a pivotal moment in our education system in light of what is being called the global economy. Business involvement, educators, and parents are all integral in determining the proper balance in order to create successful avenues for students. But it will take each of us, whether we have students currently in school or not. And so we were able today to speak with Representative Donahue and Cindy Garlock on things that are happening, but more importantly on things that need to change and how they can be done. And so we thank you for joining us today, but more importantly, thank you guys for your committed life to education and our young people and your continued commitment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.